Alex. So if you're starting in 3 seconds, we're starting in a couple more seconds.
I think we're just started. Yeah.
If we've started, I want to welcome one and all to BerryFlow Upstream number 127, Mercury. Here with Alex Bass. He's our maestro tonight, as always.
Pretty good. Sorry, you chop rude when you asked me. I think you asked me a question. I'm doing pretty well.
Alex is already a terrible maestro.
The one night I introduced him, he can't even take the pass on that one. I'm glad you're doing well,
Yes,
Alex.
yes.
A little bit north of you, we have a couple others. How you doing, Brandon?
I'm doing well. It's been a while since I've been back on, so it's nice to be back with you guys. Always good banter.
Yeah, I hope that's not what it's consolidated down to, but it feels that way, doesn't it? Scott is also back with us as well from BB Central. How you doing, Scott?
I'm doing well, man. It feels good to be back. Yeah, it's good. Let's do this.
And we have an awesome guest, Brother Neil. Man's awesome. Check him out in our D-Tech 50 review. We actually collaborated on my accessory video. That was like this accessory section of that review, which is actually pretty great. And because of that, while I'm here, if you comment on BerryFlow and or Crackberry, Blaze and I are going to figure out, we have a D-Tech 50, what is this? A smart pocket that we're giving away in honor of Anil coming on and hanging out with us. How you doing, man?
Hey, I'm good. How you doing, James? How you doing, boys?
Hey.
Oh, trying to get my intro music queued up here.
I love it. I'm so glad that you had that on deck.
Oh God.
I know that song. What is that song?
Yeah.
Downtown by Macklemore.
Yeah.
Oh my God, yes.
Oh, yeah.
We might need to do a music video shortly after this, right?
We got enough people here to start a boy
Right?
band.
Oh God.
Brand oh man, I'm thinking too much into it already. No, so this week, guys, interesting week in BlackBerry. I would say probably one of the best weeks this year in terms of news, like very satisfying week in a lot of different areas. Let's just start right off the top. Mercury leak.
Yep.
Crackberry caught it, tossed it up there. Blaze did a beautiful collage of the images, let me tell you. Definitely go check it out on Crackberry if you haven't seen. Mercury, this device we've been talking about for a while. We saw some Geekbench specs come up about it. We've been hearing about it, and we're finally getting some actual hands-on of what could potentially be the next and last QWERTY device from BlackBerry. What were your guys' takes on this leak? Did you think it was something that you could actually see BlackBerry putting to market, or do you think it was a little bit early? That's the Passport SE, sorry.
I think they should have had it out earlier. I think everybody wants a QWERTY device from them. And I think, like I've said it before, I think probably it would have been better to put out before the D-Tech 60, but I understand based on other stuff I've read that the D-Tech 60, the reason they put it out was for other reasons. So, I mean, it's a good time. If that's the next device that comes out, I think people will be happy. I think the BlackBerry faithful especially will be happy. And even other people, I mean, the main thing that got people interested about the Passport was the keyboard. And it was something different. And I think the Mercury, based on what we're seeing, is going to be something that's also going to be different. It's not going to quite be that classic, BlackBerry Bold form factor, but it's going to be a bit more of an elongated kind of chocolate bar form factor. So I think that's going to catch people's eyes.
For better or worse, depending on how you look at it, right?
Yeah.
Can we please just roll back to what Brad did to the chocolate bar? Yes, that's awesome. Oh man. No, I'm looking at the device, right? It looks a lot like a Passport SE, right? That's the device I'm actually using right now, ironically enough. So, do you think that's a good thing, or do you think maybe they should have left that design alone and kind of come up with something, new? It feels like a mishmash of like a classic and an SE almost running Android, which is maybe good.
It looks like the classic and the SE had a Android baby together.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's a bad thing per se. Like I personally don't think that a whole lot of people are even going to recognize actually the similarities, less the actual BlackBerry faithful, right? So, and those people are going to be like, sweet, bring me back to the SE days. Everybody else on the market won't even put two and two together in my context. It's going to be interesting to note though how well this device does, because this is as many times as we said it, this could be to make it or break it for the hardware division. If this one doesn't sell, then there's obviously no physical keyboard market out there to be had. If BlackBerry can't make this one sell,
Yeah.
you might as well shut her down.
Well, I mean, technically they're doing that anyway.
Yeah,
So.
right.
I mean, when you really look at the situation, I don't think it really matters whether or not this one actually sells or not. You know, at least the BlackBerry, it's like they've already made their declaration. They're out of hardware. It's up to everybody else at this point. And I don't know. It's a weird scenario because at the end of the day, this could be one of the better devices that they put out. Like we say that almost all the time, especially with the past, 2 BlackBerry devices that have been released. You know, it's one of the better devices that they put out. But the DTEC 50 and the DTEC 60 aren't technically their hardware, so you run into problems with that conversation. And this one is technically their hardware, but they've already stated that they're getting out of the hardware. So, in the long run, does it even matter how well it sells or doesn't sell? It's I don't know. It's a really weird situation and weird topic. I mean, obviously, everybody who is a BlackBerry fan would like to see it sell lots and basically hope that it turns a nice profit for them. But realistically, even if it does sell, what does that mean? What does that mean for BlackBerry's hardware division? Are they going to roll back on like, oh, well, the Mercury sold really well, so we're back into hardware again? I don't see that ever happening, right? So,
well, based on that declaration, do we know who's even building this for them? Is this an in-house design, outsourced build, or is this coming from the TCL?
That's the other thing too. Is like we can call it an in-house device, but what does that really entail as well? Because basically, it just entails that it was designed in-house, not necessarily built in-house. Like, they didn't fire up a factory in Waterloo just to go ahead and produce these things out. Somebody's building this for them, whether it be Wistron or Foxconn or,
or here's my conspiracy theory, and please, this is probably not happening whatsoever, but just the way everything looks, right? I don't know if Alex can queue up like a closer shot of the Mercury device, but if you take a look at that device, the keyboard looks a lot like a 9780 keyboard, like keys going all the way to the side, like all the way to the edges, which looks great, styled in with the 4-row that we saw on the Classic. But the key shape looks a lot more similar to that we've seen on the Passport. Especially, I'm like looking at my SE keyboard and I'm looking at that, and I'm like, those look the exact same. Like, so that's kind of interesting. But also kind of the placement as well of that fingerprint sensor, if that is what we're seeing down there in the bottom of that image, looks like almost undone or unfinished. I don't know if Blaze, you wanted to take a whack at what you think might be going on there, because it looks just a little bit, maybe it's the lighting. I mean, it looks like there's something going on there. Maybe like it doesn't look like a traditional space bar, I'll put it,
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, everything that we know about the device thus far points that the fingerprint sensor is essentially going to be in the space bar, or at least be implemented throughout the keyboard itself, right? So looking at that situation, I mean, I think Scott did at least somebody on BB Central did just made the image a little bit brighter and washed out so that you could actually see what's going on with the keyboard. You can tell it's not a traditional space bar that's on there. There's something going on with the space bar itself, which logically shows that they're probably going to be putting the fingerprint sensor in there. And we've seen the previous patents for that and everything as well with the keyboard. So, I mean, there's something going on there, but you can tell that even just looking at the hardware on the keyboard doesn't necessarily look polished or finished off either. So it's really one of those things where chances are what we're looking at here is not complete hardware. I don't think anybody in their right mind would say that what we're looking at is the finalized version here, because you can tell that there's still some roughy, sketchy kind of things going on with the actual keyboard. It looks kind of like beat up and just rough, I guess is the best word to put into play there. But I mean, every single sign shows that the fingerprint sensor is going to be somewhere within that actual keyboard, whether it be on the spacebar or deeply integrated into the keyboard itself. So
that kind of brings me to, again, back to the placement of this thing. And kind of, again, we're talking about hardware partners, so maybe we could take some subtle irony in this. But if this is my Samsung S7, right, and it has a keyboard sensor right on the front, very in line with where potentially we may see BlackBerry put their own, right there at the bottom center. What also is kind of interesting is that this device has these awful capacitive buttons, and it also looked like maybe that was what was going on that navigation area. I would think soft keys, similar to how we have on DTEC 5060 Priv, would be a much easier idea. But do you think we could see some capacitive keys there? And if so, like, why? Because I couldn't quite make a sense of why they'd want to do that.
Realistically, they probably just have a black bar area down there. I'd be surprised if it was actually capacitive. There's really no reason for it to be. And one of the things, too, is, like, you know, you lose... I think if you have, like, a keyboard out, I guess you're not going to have a virtual keyboard out in this kind of phone, so it wouldn't matter anyway. But the thing that I kept going back to before was Google Assistant showing up in that center button when you tap it, not being, you know, having it capacitive and not able to move or show anything. It's a lot more confusing to the average user to know, hey, Google Assistant's there if you hold it down, like on Nougat. I just feel like it would be a mistake for them to make those capacitive because there's really no reason for them to be. Like, I don't.
So
it's
Alex,
tough to
what
tell.
what if the space bar, keyboard, whatever, right, fingerprint sensor is not a home button? Now you only have the home button on, you know, that black bar row. If that was the case, and again, this would be like an ideal dream, because when I look at the Mercury device, I see a lot of the BlackBerry Classic in it, and I see like the classic version of, you know, that device running Android. So imagine if something going on in that capacitive setup was also kind of like a trackpad, and you could use the home button basically to kind of slide around in a similar manner that we've seen implemented by others. We've seen Palm do something like that on the Pixie and the Pre. So it wouldn't be totally obscure, but it would be kind of interesting to see what they all put into this device. As Blaze kind of hearkened to earlier, this might be the last go that they have, and whether this, you know, solidifies in a model for them in the future, or whether this will be the last one. Definitely interesting that it's Nougat that the device may be launching with as well. I think that's a good, timely way to go around and get that. I'm still so excited about BB10 though, guys. I feel like it should be more part of the conversation because it's such a huge thing that BlackBerry's actually put this maintenance release out. And you can go check on Crackberry to dig through the threads and find some of the changes, but a lot of them are minuscule. Are any of you guys excited that BB10 got an update at this point, or are we all really just looking and focusing on the Android camp of things?
I'd be more excited if there was actually something substantial within the update itself.
Yeah.
It's literally 1.6 gigabytes of nothingness. So
I watched James, I watched your video on what's new in BB 10.3.3, and I think it was like the first or second sentence, you're like, there's really not a whole bunch new. It's more of a security update. And then by the time you said that, I was kind of like, okay, my interest went from like here to
11 minutes later.
Yeah, and then like 10 minutes later, I'm still on video talking about God knows what.
But we've been told this from day one, like, they manage our expectations, yet here we are, like, hoping for something, and I still don't have it on my work classic, and really, I don't really care, because I knew from day one it was going to be next to nothing other than security updates, which maybe for my work phone I should be excited for, if you think about it.
You know, maybe when it gets out to the masses, there will be more people who can poke around and uncover if there is actually anything new.
Oh yeah, I mean,
some
just
browser.
In the general view of things, like if I download this and I look at it instantaneously, with any new larger update, there's always going to be that expectation that there's going to be something visually noticeable going on within an update, right? Like people were saying, well, why is the update so big? Why is it like 1.6 gigabytes if it doesn't actually contain anything? It has to contain something. Where, you know, from our standpoint looking at it, it doesn't necessarily contain anything. But realistically, there are deeper level changes that are happening in there. They probably improved a lot of stuff that we don't necessarily know about or probably won't even genuinely care about at the end of the day, because, you know, it's just lower level stuff that isn't necessarily, you know, visual. People react more to visual changes rather than deep down level changes, right? Like if you go through the forums on Crackberry and stuff like that, like you can see that there are actual improvements in there. But part of the problem is that BlackBerry number one, hasn't even announced the update. Like, they put out this large update that they haven't even acknowledged, for one. And two, they don't have an actual changelog. An actual changelog would give you a realistic look at what actually was changed deep down in those lower levels. So it again, visually, there's nothing has changed. You know, you get a download indicator, you get an IAP certification, you get anti-phishing in your browser. That's the gist of the changes that are visual.
And you get a fixed runtime.
Yeah, you can't even see the NIAP certification. So what difference does that make, right? But, you know, realistically, there is more there. It's just nobody has gone really deep down into it to be able to say, yeah, okay, this got fixed, this Bluetooth got fixed, or it now works with this car, or, you know, this button reacts the way that it should, or the scrolling is more easier within the keyboard, stuff like that. There are actual changes there. It's just they genuinely need to be pointed out to people to be able to go ahead and say, oh, okay, well, I see that has been improved, right? But
what about that dark hub? That's kind of sexy.
Yeah. Oh my!
You guys get dark hub?
Yeah, I didn't get that on my update. You maybe to send me the bar file? Like, what? No, that's not going to work. You know, I'm glad it's coming out. I'm glad BlackBerry's gone ahead and continued to just support the OS in whatever way they can. Who cares if that 1.6 gigabytes was just a redump of the OS, right? A fresh install is a fresh install. That goes a long way to just helping people out and making the experience seem a lot, you know, smoother than it was. And I think that's a good thing to happen. Just updates keep things timely, keep things fresh. I guess frustrated. Like, I wish if the Mercury came out, like, I wish it was called like the BlackBerry closure, because I feel like that's what a lot of us need. No, honestly, I feel like even with BB10, it hasn't been like sunset yet. It's just kind of been like left in space, and it's not doing anything. It's just literally just floating there, not progressing any further. Like, I would like them to kind of do like one last, you know, maybe push of something on it and then call it a day. Like, you know, then say, all right, well, we're leaving you with that. We've changed things. We've made it as good as we can. Bye. And it's like BlackBerry's version of that is this, which is like, yeah, we got NIAP certification, which, as Blaze kind of mentioned, is like, well, not many people are going to be affected by that, especially in other countries where, you know, BlackBerry does have users, does have devices, especially BB10 ones. But it's just tough for, I think, really to say what's up with BB 10.3.3, because BlackBerry doesn't, you know, precisely know either, right? The people who get that information out there. So I'm still waiting on 10.3.4, which at this point is coming when, you know, I'd like to hear about some of that. And we have an earnings call coming, Blaze. Is that correct? I think like the end of December?
Yeah, somewhere around the end of December. I forget the exact days, like the 17th or something like that. So.
Yeah. So that's going to be really, and that's part of the problem for me, guys, right? It's like BlackBerry's silent until, you know, they have earnings coming or something's coming, right? We have the launch of the new Bez platform, or the new software platform for enterprise that they're talking about on December the 8th. We have the DTEC 60 still coming about, the recent, you know, updates that we've gotten on the Android Hub Plus services app. 10.3.3 finally dropping. Like, all the good news is coming right when they need it to come, you know, which isn't necessarily convenient for us as users who, you know, are on Verizon and have Marshmallow on our device for over a year, or, you know, whatever else may be going on. But I think it's always interesting when, I mean, Alex, I don't know if you can pull up the pictures of the Vienna from that Crackberry posted a while back. That picture literally was leaked out right around the time the Priv launched. I think it was like shortly after the Priv launched, which again, at that point, they're like, oh my gosh, you know, they're done with phones. Like, this is going to be the last one. And then they're like, no, we're still kind of working on something. And that was Vienna, right? And now they've been working on this device, the Mercury, whatever you want to call it. It's been this candy bar style QWERTY Android. And now we're at a point where we're starting to see something in the hardware flesh. Brandon, do you think that's like an ideal device for them to go out on? Or do you think maybe leaving it with the slider, leaving it with a little bit more innovation, it was a better way to go?
No, I think the Mercury is a good way to go. I mean, it's gonna have all the bells and whistles, including the what's it called, the the touch sensitive the finger scanner on the bottom keyboard. That's what it looks like. I think it's still innovative. I think it's what people maybe not in terms of like the raw innovation that we've seen in terms of the form factor and the capacitive keyboard that was introduced with the Passport. But I think it's a type of device that everybody was kind of envisioning over the past 2 years and hoping that BlackBerry would come out. I know I was seeing images and concept images over the past 2 years of people wanting kind of more of that all-touch screen factor, but with a keyboard on the bottom, which I think this is what that Mercury device is really going to be. And I think that it's going to be interesting to see how people accept it or not. I think most people will accept it because they want to have that bigger screen to have more screen real estate, and they don't want screen real estate to be given at the expense of the keyboard, which is kind of what we saw with the Priv. But I still think there's a lot of people who are keyboard faithfuls who just want to have a keyboard there all the time and not have to deal with sliding it up and sliding it down. Because based on my experience, when I'm using the Priv, I'd say probably like 80% of the time I'm using just the on-screen keyboard because it's just a fluid thing. Like, it doesn't make it for me. Most of the messages that are like 2 or 3 sentences to reply, it doesn't make sense for me to open up the keyboard and type it in if I can just tap away and have it sent and have that half that time, right? So I think it'll be a good device if they do end up ending on it.
And it's so hard to call it an end too, because we know they're trying to partner with people out there to go build devices for them and potentially license the keyboard and all these other aspects. It's like, I think this is going to be one of the last widely available ones, but I still feel like it's not going to be the last one. BlackBerry still has something to do in the hardware space, and even if it's devices like DTEC 50, DTEC 60 that come about, I think it's going to be a good deal. If you have a DTEC 60, go buy yourself some protection, please. And oddly enough, you can't go to BlackBerry to do that. Oddly, BlackBerry Care Protection Plan, which is something BlackBerry introduced, I want to say back with like the Classic or the Passport, basically an insurance program where you could pick up coverage for your phone for drops and power surges and all the like cracked screens, is not available for devices like the DTEC 50 and 60. And I know the first thing you're going to say is, those devices are built by TCL, so, why would BlackBerry, go out and cover them? But it brought us to an interesting point, Blaze, I think in our last after show where you and I were talking about, well, what makes a BlackBerry a BlackBerry? And you might be able at this point to chalk it up to the fact that does BlackBerry insure it or not, right? And again, interesting to see whether this Mercury device is going to fall on either side of that or whether a change on the protection plan side is going to come. I've heard from people I've spoken with that a protection plan has been asked about, it's obviously something people want out there, and that they're looking at how to do that, right? So I'm sure it's a conversation that needs to be back had with the ODM to figure out how they can get that done. But hopefully they're working on it, right? Especially because DTEC 60 is a nice premium device. You'd hate to drop it and let it hit 2 feet of concrete and totally spider crack across your screen and digitize it. Like, why would you want that, right?
Yeah, so why would you want that?
Why would you? I have a Passport SE, guys, just so you DTEC 60, poor thing. As I said, if you have a DTEC 50, comment on this video so I can give this away. I never got to use it. I used the actual hard case that Anil definitely suggested for me, so I just have this extra one. So comment somewhere, let us know if you want it. DTEC 50 owners, don't get crazy. Don't comment for this and then go buy your DTEC 60 once you win it on Amazon, which has it for like $299 or $229, excuse me. And that's $229 Canadian, right, on Amazon, or is that deal done already?
$229 US, $289.
Nice, not bad at all. I think a DTEC 50 is worth that.
Yeah, for a DTEC 50, $289. That's Canadian. I mean, I think that's the important part is that it's Canadian. Like $289 Canadian is pretty damn good.
You can't find anything reasonable around that price point.
Go to Blue, man.
$289 is a decent price in Canadian to get the device. That's a DTEC 50, right? So
yeah. It's not a DTEC 60, unfortunately.
Yeah, the 60 would have been nice at that price point, but wishful thinking.
But big news, the Priv has permanently dropped down to $399. Anybody see that?
That's actually probably where it should have.
Alex, maybe for the whole family.
That's savage. It's crazy because that's like almost half of what Alex got them for originally. So it's just like bittersweet for sure. But it's been out a year. I mean, it's just crazy the value that these devices hold too, right? If I were to look at like another brand, I'm not even gonna say a name, right? If just one of the more popular consumer brands out there, and you look at the resale value of their 1-year-old devices, you're gonna get at least $100 premium on them, which is kind of crazy. Because if you look at BB10, like what this device right now is like the same cost of a Priv, and that's kind of an awesome thing for people because you really can kind of choose what you want. Do you want the BB10 experience? Do you want the Android experience? Either way, you have the awesome keyboard, right? Kind of just an interesting place that Shop BlackBerry has those devices on.
I don't know, man, but again, the Canadian perspective, the Priv on Shop BlackBerry Canada is $5.99, which is like that's
crazy.
Obscene.
Yeah, no one's buying it for that.
Like, I think it was down to like 3 something during like the Black Friday sales and the Cyber Monday sales, and they should have just left it at that.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly.
They should have totally just left it at that price.
Yeah, that would have been way more competitive. You'd think, but maybe they have more enterprise, small business to be doing, and getting a premium on those devices is important to the bottom line. It's very interesting that.
But I cannot envision any consumer going out and buying a Priv for $5.99 Canadian right now, especially when you know that the deals were available for like 3 something earlier. Like, what if you really wanted it, you should have bought it then, because it's ludicrous to pay $5.99 Canadian now.
That's the worst feeling. Black Friday regret. It's like, oh man, I should have bought that. Oh.
Yeah, I'd just direct them to the D-Tech 50, man.
Because I'm like,
absolutely
trying not to spend money, and I'm like,
Black Friday is one of those things where like lots of things are on sale, but then when the dust settles and you bought stuff, you realize you didn't really need half of it.
Yeah.
And then you're just like, man, like I'm not gonna use it, but it was like a good sale. I couldn't pass up on it.
Yeah, like I don't go buy random junk or anything like that. Like mostly everything that I wanted was like over $300 and was on sale for a really good price. So I'm like, shit.
Yeah, if you're getting big ticket items like a TV, then Black Friday is your go-to, right? Or like a computer, even a laptop, even a phone. Sometimes they have good deals on them.
Scott had it right, man. If they're upset that they can't afford a Priv, get a D-Tech 50. You'll be very happy.
I would seriously just say, regardless, even if they could afford it, I'm like, why? Just go get a 50 because it's worth paying half the price for it.
Yeah, that's a good argument that I totally just didn't even think about. Like, just buy a D-Tech 50. I mean, the only reason to buy a Priv at this point is because you simply need the keyboard, and
which is garbage.
Yeah, arguably.
strong feelings.
I'm looking on Amazon.com, and there is.
There is what?
Drum roll.
There is lag.
I'm waiting for the B-roll to come through.
Well, I guess we'll never know.
The mystery continues.
There's
feel like we're in Final Jeopardy here.
50. There's a shipping. U.S.
That sounds like a good deal.
I just want to say, though, I wish that BlackBerry had have done. I mean, obviously, it's not a final design, of course, but history shows that the majority of the times when we're looking at pre-release hardware, it's generally not really far off from the reality. I wish that the design was a little bit more cohesive, like for the Mercury, because the very top of the device looks like a Passport Silver Edition, and then the bottom looks like a classic, or pretty much any other BlackBerry device. But I wish that there was some consistency. Like, I want like a silver chin or something to make the design a little bit more cohesive all the way through. Because now it just looks like two phones. Like if you covered up one part of it, like say for example you covered up the bottom and I only showed you the top, I think most people would think that there's probably a silver piece at the bottom, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where if I covered up the top and only showed you the bottom, you'd probably think that it was flat black all the way through, up to the top, right?
As it should be. It should
Right,
be gun.
it
It should be
doesn't
gunmetal
seem
gray and
like
beautiful.
It seems like literally two devices jammed together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look at the Mercury leaks, and then look at this cohesive, right? The top and the
Exactly.
bottom are the same color, and you can clearly tell which is top and bottom because they're not the same. Same thing with the back, right? This is, I think, where they kind of break from it a little bit, right? You've got the metal up top here, but that's obviously the SIM card tray, so it just makes sense to do. Now, the back of the Mercury would be interesting to see. I would love for it to be just like the Passport SE, especially because we're looking at a device that it says, high precision and craftsmanship under the rumored, spec leak. But at the same point, what does that really mean? Are we looking at classic level quality, or are we looking at AT&T Passport level quality, or are we looking at something, a little bit different?
High precision and quality. I mean, I'm pretty sure every device developed in a factory is high precision. I'm pretty sure they're. What does that even mean?
Except the Priv. The Priv did not sell with high precision and craftsmanship. This device is supposedly running the Snapdragon 625, which is a little bit better than the processor on the DTEC 50. 4.5 3:2 ratio screen, which is probably the most interesting aspect of the phone and the ratio. 3 gigabytes of RAM, 32 storage, 18 rear, 8 megapixel front on the cameras, a 3400 milliamp hour battery, so almost Priv size battery. Quick Charge 3.0, aluminum housing, and aimed at the enterprise space, similar as the Classic was. Very, very interesting. How much would you guys pay for something like that?
It's a good
How much?
question.
Yeah, how much am I going to pay for something like that, or how much is BlackBerry going to ask me to pay for something like that?
The former, right? I want to know how much you would pay because we know BlackBerry's going to price this thing between $500 and $600 already. Like, we know that it's going to be expensive. It's going to be on the higher of the mid end, right? I'm assuming it's going to probably sit right where Priv does right now, Canadian dollar, but a little bit lower, like maybe a $75 savings on there.
I would personally pay like 500 Canadian for something like that.
Yeah, mine's
It's a bit low, but
I just don't see.
That's personally where I'm standing at.
I think 500 is a good spot.
400 US, something like that.
400 US sounds right on the money. That's where I would be about. But yeah, it's going to be 500, right? Because the security they're selling you. Because DTEC works now, right? It got an update, so the DTEC is the value you're buying into, guys. No, I think it's definitely going to be a good device. I'm interested to see what Nougat brings to the Android experience and whether the apps kind of get an update alongside that. And, we got Dark Theme. I almost said Dark Hub. Neil, you're killing me, man.
Don't.
Say Dark. That
BlackBerry
should be.
people will come at you.
Yeah, it's going to be rough.
Well, they did BlackBerry Dark Launcher, so how hard could it be to do BlackBerry Black theme BBM calendar or contacts on Android?
I thought there's already a black theme calendar on Android.
I don't know. It's definitely odd to hear the dark, in the launcher dark theme, because then it doesn't turn anything dark theme. Really,
No, I didn't understand that either. But,
It's only the app tray.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
just the background. Essentially, like what Nova and all these things. Yeah.
Hours.
Yes.
Yeah. When I throw dark theme on a phone, like I want it to be dark.
Yeah.
Like I want it to be black on my AMOLED, and then they put like the dark gray, and I'm like, well, I feel like I'm watching the background of a Skype video of Upstream.
Well,
Maybe it was just like some co-op student just added it in. That was,
it's Brandon's friend. What was some other news that happened just to close out? We had a new HQ for the UK that was built, and that kind of transitioned us pretty well into our Upstream Patreon questions. It's some nice ones this week. I sent the broadcast out on BBM, and it's cool because BBM lets you send out a broadcast to a specific group of contacts. So I have all my Upstream contacts for Patreon like listed as BBM associates, and then I can go ahead and just ping all of them at once without, doing one of those awful broadcast We're,
I
we're,
deleted you for sending me a broadcast. Sorry, James. We no longer BBM friends.
yeah, now we're just Allo friends, and just kidding. I hate Allo. Let me tell you. That's something for the
Relax.
show.
Relax.
Oh,
Different
Allo
story.
I haven't
Are
even
you still
touched it.
Alex, you still using it?
Yeah, me and all my family and friends, aside from James. He doesn't count
Yeah.
as a friend because he's not on Allo with me.
So all the same people that Alex screwed over with the priv are also using Allo. Yeah, exactly.
Oh
Exactly.
my
right.
God.
Shitty instant
Yeah,
messaging
this is
service.
gonna end
Awesome. No, it's
Snake
like
poison. Alex is the snake poison for his family and friends.
Hey,
You're in the desert. Alex will sell you dirt. Like he's that good at it. He just trolls our Android and then like finds these little tidbits that he can throw at you. No, but Mike Robinson, one of our patron supporters, left a comment for us. If you don't know, Maidenhead's on the River Thames is upstream, west of London, and it's a really expensive place. And pretty much just like the Silicon Alley / corridor and the tech center of South England, and that's where BlackBerry just established their new old headquarters for that region. So it's kind of cool. I mean, I think it's a good tell when a company is hiring people and opening up new offices that they're not dead, they're not idle, they're not resting on the laurels. They're making things happen, and we've seen a lot of focus. I think Blaze can attest to this too. A lot of focus on the UK and that sector. I mean, literally, we just got their recent acquisition encryption now basically regulated and able to actually pass off certifications to other businesses. There's a lot of focus going on there right now. I think there's a lot of business to be had. I know, Brandon, you didn't make it to England on your last trip, did you? Or did you get to stop?
Yeah, I did. I was in the UK and Ireland. So I was in Leeds. I didn't go to London though. I didn't go to this place that you're talking about.
You could have put in an application in, Brandon.
Actually, I have a story about I have a BlackBerry story for the week. It's kind of sad, but it's also kind of good at the same
Oh
time.
my god.
So I was at a.
Why do you never bring good news?
No, I think it might be good.
His
So
priv exploded.
I was at an industry event on Friday. It was like a Christmas kind of luncheon or whatever for industry professionals. And so I ended up at this table, and there's a civil engineer, and he had a passport, a BlackBerry passport. So I'm like, oh, hey, like I have a BlackBerry too. I guess you and I are like one of the few holdouts. And he's like, oh yeah, I went to Waterloo, so I got support, right? And I'm like, oh, I went to Waterloo, and I got support as well. So there you go. It's just people who went to the University of Waterloo who are like repping BlackBerries now, apparently.
It wasn't too bad of a story, Brandon. I
That's
guess
not
that's a
sad.
good one.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I thought it was gonna be rough.
Yeah.
I guess what's sad about it is there's only two of you.
Yeah. No, actually, there was quite a few people. There's a lot of the older crowd, like the execs and stuff at a lot of these engineering companies have BlackBerries. So there's still a lot of support. It just comes down to the issue is that I find in my field a lot of companies are moving away from, like my company, for instance, it's there. If you're a manager and you get a corporate phone, they give you an iPhone. And that's because like their timesheet apps and all these other kind of back-end apps to do with kind of housekeeping for the company are all moving and shifting towards iOS and Android, right? So that's what I'm kind of seeing in my field is that there's a bunch of apps and applications that are being used in the field, and it's just simpler to have your employees use like iOS and be able to use those apps instead of and I guess they have their own security solution. I think my company is with not good. What's the other one?
Airwatch.
Mobile Iron.
Ew.
Yeah, I think there was Mobile Iron. Yeah, and it's so that's what it is. So I don't know. It's kind of sad. It's kind of sad because everybody had Blackberries before because they're like, oh, we're gonna support the Canadian company, we're gonna do this and that. But at the end of the day, like you just see this shift, and it's like they don't have the same apps. But it's interesting. It'd be interesting to see how this new update for Bez coming up, kind of solidifies their role. As we've been seeing over the past year, they're not quite, garnering that support in the mobile space, but in their back end space, BlackBerry's still kind of up there in the top notch, echelon there. So
Well,
that'll be interesting to see.
I think that's part of the story that doesn't necessarily get told, is that, like, yeah, so what if your company is handing out an iPhone or an Android device at this point? The real question becomes, what are they using to secure those devices? What is the background network that they're on at this point? So,
yeah,
I mean, a lot of people are still focused on, well, my company is switching away from BlackBerry. Well, yeah, but chances are they're probably using good technology, or they're using something else, right? And if they're using good technology, then they're using a BlackBerry service anyway. So,
and if you think about it, it's a hell of a lot easier to convince a company to switch over to kind of a back-end system that can work with their existing devices that they've already kind of disseminated amongst their employees. Like, for instance, my company, they gave out iPhones to all their managers, but if something came up and there was an opportunity to switch to another provider and BlackBerry bid on it and stuff, that would be a value proposition, and be easier to kind of bring their services, because they've really embraced this multi-platform approach to Bez.
Right.
So they're really in a good position to get brought on to new companies, and I can imagine that the subscriptions that you get per user, you're still making revenue per user even if they don't have your device, right?
yeah,
But
exactly.
you're kind of using that IP amongst different. You don't have to deal with the manufacturing side of it. You're doing it more on the development side, which is what we're seeing with BlackBerry, right? More software related stuff where they can control the variables.
That's what BlackBerry's picking up of good technology was, monumental for BlackBerry at that point in time, because, I mean, we've said it before here several times that, like, they basically acquired a mass amount of customers at that point just because they bought good technology, because all of those people who are running iOS and running Android devices and using good technology instantly became BlackBerry customers at that point, as long as they continue to use it. Like, they didn't have to go out and create a device that everybody would purchase. They basically bought the customer base that existed for the iOS and Android users, right?
What's interesting too is that
it's incredibly smart. They don't get enough recognition for that.
One of the things that is cool, to caveat off of what Blaze just told us, is that a lot of those customers that they basically acquired were old customers that they used to have on older versions of Bez that switched to an all iPhone strategy, similar to what how Brandon's organization does. So it's definitely very, very pivotal. I think the time for a platform that can do it across the board and really help everybody out. I wonder about the branding though. I feel like Good almost nowadays is a stronger brand than the Bez is in some spheres, right? I'm not saying all industries would feel the same way. But I don't know if Bez can be a trickle-down gold standard in the same way that the newer age younger companies are looking at their mobility needs. I think they're looking less for what Bez has and more for like a very slim, short-down approach.
Do you think that's because maybe the BlackBerry brand, like, I think Research in Motion was a lot better in terms of understanding the back-end, solutions that BlackBerry provides. But once they changed their name over to BlackBerry, they kind of, intertwined their company's product
pigeonholed themselves, man.
Yeah, with the mobile device product branding, right? So a lot of people, when they think of BlackBerry, rightly or wrongly, they think of the mobile devices because that's basically where the BlackBerry name comes from. Whereas Research in Motion was more open-ended. People saw them more than just a BlackBerry device, more as a security provider, right? So I think that's why you might think that the Good probably has a better kind of brand image in that sphere, in some spheres, because it's just not intertwined, it's not connected with a mobile device. It's always been kind of a back-end solution, right?
There's also, I mean, when it comes to the branding and marketing as well, I mean, when was the last time that you actually saw a Bez 12 announcement of any sort? Like, they sort of taken Bez 12 and the whole branding of Bez 12 and basically the concept of it and taking it out of the loop. Like, now it's not necessarily about BES 12. It's about their enterprise solutions or their enterprise software. And when you look at like the developer consoles and stuff like that, everything is based around good dynamics and good technology and all of that stuff. Like, I honestly can't remember the last time I heard an announcement saying, okay, we've updated BES 12 or whatever. And that's not to say that it hasn't happened, because they did update BES 12 recently. But the focus itself has been off of BES 12 as a branding recognition thing. And they've just been rolling out with ad hoc and good technology and AppDome and basically everything that is not BES 12. It's interesting to see, because I don't think a lot of people pay attention to those little things, and it's like, okay, they're moving away from the BES 12 branding itself, and they're just focusing on like enterprise software as like the recognition item rather than any one specific item. It's really, really interesting when you actually take a look at the situation over the years about how they branded these things and how they pushed them out to the market. And I agree with Brandon in terms of like Research in Motion. That Research in Motion was an all-encompassing sort of naming convention that they should have stuck with. But, they changed their name to BlackBerry. And like John Chen said, you can't, just because your kid's getting bad grades in school, you don't go changing their name, right?
If your kid's name is BlackBerry, you might want to consider it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny.
Torsten Hines initiate that when BlackBerry 10 kicked off.
Exactly.
As part of the big.
It's probably It was a marketing play, right?
Yeah. And in retrospect, it was a marketing play that didn't necessarily play out well. They probably should just change the name back to Research in Motion.
They should have licensed BBX. Just saying.
Oh boy.
Not that adds anything to the conversation. Let's cap it out here, gentlemen. We have plenty of Upstream patron questions to answer in our after show, and we can kind of sit back. I can get a drink. We can really have a well-mannered discussion. Anyway, Alex, take us out, man. We'll catch all you guys next week, hopefully with some more BlackBerry news to discuss.
Absolutely.
More Mercury news.
Yeah, hopefully we get some better high. Yeah, I want to see the back of the phone, higher quality pictures. It'll be interesting. So
Mercury's definitely looking interesting, and Nougat in general. Like, I just want to hear more about what's going on with all of that.
And what BlackBerry decides to do with it, change it up a bit. So, all right, guys, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.